All right. Hello, everyone. This is our final, I got to get my notepad. This is our final Q&A session for the agreement for sale cash cow formula. So make sure you get everything answered. And of course, for those of you who couldn't make it today, you can still email your questions and we'll make sure that we get those covered. And let me see. Okay. I had something I wanted to talk to you about later today, but now I can't remember where it is. Okay, yeah, there. All right. Now I did have a couple, I had some questions and comments emailed in. So first, somebody had asked about if a person purchases some agreement for sale properties now with low interest rates in place, then in a year or so, the renewal comes due at these much higher interest rates. What do you do? Mortgage payments could go from $2,200 a month all the way up to $3,700 or more. Is there a way to cushion the big increase in monthly payments? The short answer is no. But it's the same as if you had the mortgage in your own name, you would face renewal, you would face the higher interest rates. So a couple important points. When I buy properties, regardless of whether I'm buying them conventionally or creatively, when I buy properties, I analyze them based on the worst case scenario. So I'll look at it as, okay, I'm pretty sure I can get $2,000 a month rent, but what will it look like if the market turns and I can only get 17 or 1800? So that's one of the things that we look at. Then also, of course, factoring in some properties, you may never have a vacancy, but in other properties, if they're, for instance, in a C neighborhood, you're going to have vacancy there before you have vacancy in a B or an A neighborhood. So that's where buying in the slightly better neighborhoods gives you less risk, gives you more expense, more cost to get the property, but it gives you less risk with vacancy and being able to find good tenants. And then another thing, of course, is interest rates. So if we're getting, whether it's a conventional or agreement for sale, if we're getting interest rates of 3% or 2%, what happens if they go up to 5 or 6? Because if you look at the statistics, the average interest rate in Canada is approximately 5 for, if you average over the 25 years, it's approximately 5.5 for fixed and approximately 4.5 for variable. So statistically, variable is going to save you money over fixed. I'll save that for a second. But you do have to be careful with variable because couple things. Sometimes it's a prime plus instead of a prime minus. So in that case, you may want to go with a short-term fixed instead of variable. And then also with variable, with some banks, the payment stays the same no matter what the interest rate does, unless the interest rate goes above a certain threshold. And I can't remember what that term is called. Again, 3.5 hours sleep. Yeah, I can't remember what the term is called, but when the interest rate goes above a certain threshold,
trigger rate.
thank you, your trigger rate. When the interest rate goes above the trigger rate, then you're basically paying all interest and no principal, and they have to raise your payment. So, two reasons why I don't like that. The first reason is some banks don't actually tell you that the rate has changed. This happened to me with TD. They neglected to inform me that the rates were changing. And in fact, I had forgotten I was on a variable rate with this mortgage because that's the one mortgage that we never received any notification of rates changing. All of our other mortgages that are variable, the payment changes as the interest rates change, which is a little bit of an annoyance with bookkeeping. But then you're kept apprised of how much you're paying in interest and how much you're paying in principal. Plus, if the interest rate drops, your payment drops. So if you sign in to a variable interest rate now, and it's with one of those banks where it's a set payment. So your payment might be $2,000 a month. And then in 2 years, the interest rate is down, for example, your payment is still going to be $2,000 a month. Sure, you're going to have accelerated principal pay down, but your payment is going to be $2,000 a month. So not the best for cash flow. And especially if you're putting that mortgage in your own name, because then your debt coverage ratio is going to be messed up. So those are considerations that I use when I'm considering what could happen with interest rates. But on the plus side, like I say, the interest rates right now, that's the average interest rate. So my point is we're not likely to go much higher and stay high. If it does go higher, it will be short term relative to real estate. So yeah, the short answer is there is no way to cushion it. If interest rates are going up, what we need to do is prepare for it. And again, that's for conventional or creative purchasing. We need to really look at those numbers and make sure that there is a cushion built into that when we're analyzing the property. And always analyze with the worst case scenario in mind. If rents go down, obviously expenses always go up. And if interest rates go up, and if there's vacancy in a slower market. So those are our biggest risk factors. All right.
Do you carry like a reserve fund,
I have enormous secured lines of credit. So we take whatever cash we have, we just pay down, because we have one secured line of credit that has been huge forever because we bought properties with it. We used it for down payments and also major renovations. And we could have paid it down over the years, but we decided, now we're going to pay ourselves. So instead of paying down the business line of credit, we withdrew the profits and take holidays and do fun stuff. So let the tenants pay the lines of credit. I don't need to pay them. So, but I do have, so I have that one that's big, that is always big, but then we also have other lines that I could have every emergency in the world happen at once and we'd be fine. So yeah, but yeah, if you don't have unsecured credit is okay, but it is usually at least 2% or 3, now I can't remember, percent above the bank's prime rate. Whereas a secured line of credit could be as little as 0.5% above the prime rate. Often it's 1%, sometimes 1.5, but sometimes as low as 0.5%. So secured lines of credit are fantastic for reserve funds, and also for as I say, for down payments. And that's the other thing I've mentioned before about when you are getting a mortgage in your own name, if you can get one with the readvanceable line of credit built in, then you have that opportunity. And I believe I've also mentioned the one property we bought that is in our long-term buy and holds, and we put the line of credit on it. Of course, we have no access to any credit. There is no limit available at the time you buy it, but we've owned it for several years now. And now that line of credit is, I believe, $86,000 sitting there available to us that we could go and, well, I could go put a 20% down payment on a property with that if I wanted to. So save that for later. What else was I going to say about that? Okay, I think that was it. The other thing was the homework, and I will share the screen. Oops. So we can, oh, that's stop video. That's the wrong thing. There we go. Okay, that one. All right. So I don't know if it's big enough to see. I'm not sure if I don't think I can expand it anymore. So this one is the old property built in 1929. And it's, yeah, it's like, for me, I would be looking at this as land value. and I didn't find out the size of the lot. So that is one thing. I was just assuming that it was a regular size lot, city lot. So we're going to assume that for now, because I wasn't interested in this place anyway, because I don't want to develop in Lloydminster. But assuming I was considering Lloydminster to develop in, then this is not terrible, and because they would be settling for 212. We don't know yet if that's the lowest they would go, but I believe that was fairly reasonable for lot value. I don't remember for sure. But if we could see, this is one where it is kind of interesting, because if you can find an agreement for sale property where it is development potential, that actually is a fantastic possible idea. If you can get a decent price for the lot, and in this case, they have a $170,000 mortgage on it, they may be willing to just go with zero down, and then you redevelop, build a duplex or something, or fourplex or something like that, and then get your financing and cash them out at that time. So the house itself, yeah, I don't do houses that old, but the thing I liked about it was the fact that the price was fair at the time. This was last year. The price was fair at the time for the size of the lot, and I could possibly walk into it with zero down on agreement for sale with, say, a 1-year term. They've got 4 years left. So, I mean, they might even do 2 years term, who knows? But I mean, you should be able to do the development within approximately a year. Depends on your relationship with your contractors. But yeah, so that was my point with this one. And otherwise, I agree that it's not likely to cash flow, and it's probably going to be a money pit as it is. But yeah, I love the idea of agreement for sale for development potential. And then the other one, did anyone else have any thoughts on that one?
It would be a really smart way to get into a land development deal. I was actually looking into multiple here in Ottawa, but they're through agents, so it's a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But it's all practice. Each and every conversation and negotiation is all practice. And I'm planting my seeds so that if it's sitting on the market, I could say, hey, listen, let's just get this deal across the finish line. And if you hold it for me, I can get the soft costs taken care of and refinance them out, just like you said.
Yeah. Well, and the lovely thing is, if you've got so this place, for instance, the 1929 bungalow is going to have an extremely limited market. So it would probably sit on the MLS forever. And so by the time when you go and approach the agent, and you might just have the conversation with them that, hey, we look at buying properties creatively and working with existing financing, and this is the type of property we're looking for. If the seller ever decides, okay, we're done trying to sell it on the MLS, let's just get rid of this, then hey, we can work something out and set up that relationship, that when the listing is getting close to expiring, then the selling realtor is going to be going, okay, well, let's get rid of this thing, let's get it sold. And yeah, as long as they're getting their commission, they're of course protecting their clients' interests first and foremost, of course, but they're going to get their commission whether they sell it to you creatively or they sell it to somebody else. So once it's an older listing and it's ready to drop off the MLS, then he might give you a call back and say, hey, let's see if we can figure something out. So yeah, it's a great idea to set up those potential seeds, as you say. All right, for the other one, oh, and yeah, somebody, what did she build? a colleague was just posting they're waiting on their appraisal. They just built a little multifamily, 12 suites, or could even have been 20. I can't remember right now, but it was in the Ottawa area, and they didn't buy creatively, but yeah, they did a development there, and they're really pumped about the market there. Okay, now the other one, where is the other one? There it is. Okay, so this one is the 339, also in Lloyd. Decent house, pretty much unfinished basement, and they're hoping to move as soon as possible. So that's promising. The husband is already there, and that means that they've already got a place that they're living in. Whether they're renting or buying, I didn't ask, but they're already set up, at least for now. So the potential is there for us to take over the mortgage, and pretty decent sized mortgage. What did we say here? Barely cash flow. Buyers have incentive. Yes, exactly. Buyers have incentive if living separately now. Basement suite potential. Good point, because it's pretty much undeveloped. Very good point. And yeah, as soon as you put a basement suite in, your cash flow increases dramatically. So we have, even looking at our places that are older than this one, because we have some places that are late 60s through 70s, and as a house right now, probably 1800, but as a legally suited property, we're getting, I don't know, 26 right now, and our rents have been as high as 29. So as the market picks up, and we're at the point now where we are starting to increase rents. So we've dropped the bomb on a couple of tenants already. But yeah, the cash flow is fantastic with legally suited. And if you can find a property that has the either unfinished basement or just started, then even if you had to rip down the drywall and put in soundproofing, it's not that, and it increases the value by approximately 10% to do a legally suited house. In some markets more, especially where it's getting more common. Like in the Edmonton market, it used to be only 10%, and now it seems to be, could even be 15% or more in some areas for the value add by having a legal suite as opposed to a finished basement. So it does add a bit of value, but the profit is where, and one thing I love about suited properties is they hold their value. So when other properties, single family properties, drop in value, the legally suited properties tend to hold their value. They don't tend to drop as much, at least in our area. So that's another thing that's good about them. But you're always going to make more money on a legally suited property than just renting to one family. So that's a great point. That would definitely make it cash flow. And yes, it does potentially have suite potential, and it's because it's a good size. A 4-level split, so they count the top 3 levels. So it's actually 1,200 for the upper 2, and then it would be 1,200 for the third and basement put together. And nice thing about 4-level splits as well is that you have one level at ground level. So if that's where your bedrooms are, you've already got egress, everything's lovely. So we in fact have a suited 4-level split. It's fantastic. And what else did we say here? Test comparables and make an offer. No more than 320. And they said they would accept 320 to 325. So we might be able to get it for 3. So I would definitely try. And of course, when you get there, then you start talking down all of because they're saying 320 is the least they could accept. But remember that we're going to go in there and say, okay, so 320, and then less the legal fees, and then less what you'd be paying for mortgage prepayment penalties, and then less the cost for all of these maintenance items that really, needed to be done already. So now we're looking at 300. So yeah, we just because they say 320 is the best they can do, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to pay them. So yeah, if we got it for 300 and oh, it doesn't, I didn't put on the comparables or anything for that, but yeah, so they were saying that houses are going for this price around there at the 325 to 330. This doesn't indicate whether that's what they were listed for or that's what they sold for. But if they're listed for 325 to 330 and we get this for 300, that's a fair price, especially if we can put in that basement. And then now this one is renewing next year, but if we're doing the basement suite, that's a good opportunity we'll leave the financing in place for this year, and then we're going to put in the suite, which will increase the value, and then we'll refinance it in a year or sell it in a year, because legally suited houses, especially with brand new suites, sell really well. So this one would have the potential for doing that as well. But again, it's if you have in-house contractors versus paying retail, because you got to see what the spread is. All right. Any other thoughts on that one?
It's not thoughts on this one in particular,
Okay.
but there was someone who I been in touch with for about a year now. I guess I seen one of his listings on Kijiji a year ago, and I tried to assign the deal, and we kind of just developed a relationship. Well, he just reached out to me saying that he just wants to get rid of his duplex. It's in Sudbury, and he told me that he's willing to do anything, and he was totally open for this agreement for sale.
Awesome.
So he has 3 years left at 1.6%.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so the catch is he wants to get rid of it because the tenants are kind of trouble. So, but I see this as a great opportunity, and I feel like if I take over the property, having like a new sheriff in town, I could implement the systems and the property management professionally where they will have to come to a compromise of some sort. I feel like maybe the current landlord just doesn't have the skills to do that.
Do you know what the issues are with the tenant?
The basement tenant complains a lot about the upstairs tenant.
Oh.
And so the upstairs tenant, I guess is a punk according to the according to the guy who wants to do this agreement for sale, but he's saying the guy upstairs is playing music loud and stuff like that, and the guy downstairs is, just a regular guy who is complaining a lot. So that's
Okay.
the main issue.
So it's a relationship issue, not a non-payment of rent issue.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't sound so bad. Yeah, perhaps the new sheriff in town is all that they need. But one thing to keep in mind for Ontario is you should always have a little thought in the back of your mind of what if I have to buy out this tenant?
Mhm.
So if and I never will have rentals in Ontario, but if I did, because I know there are great areas there, like Ottawa is a fantastic area. I've also heard really great things about Hamilton, or well, that was a
Mhm.
few years ago. But anyway, but I would always have that as part of my little mental reserve fund as to what might I need to do to get rid of these tenants, and make sure that that money is built into the deal. But if you're getting free equity, or you're getting the bonus of paying little to no money down and all these wonderful things that we're getting, then yeah, okay, I have to pay $5,000 to get rid of this tenant who suddenly decided to be a complete jerk and stop paying his rent. I got to pay $5,000 to get him out, but I got the property for nothing down. So really, it's not. Of course, that $5,000 doesn't go to the mortgage or equity or anything like that, but still, there are some great opportunities, and that is a really good example of how. So if I were you, I would be cruising all of the landlord forums on
Mhm.
Facebook and everywhere else, because there are so many people who have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And well, I was just chatting with my neighbor today, and I said something about Oh, because I said I took one of the roses. A tenant had planted this beautiful rose, and then they didn't take it with them when they moved from the property. So I
Oh.
transplanted it after last fall after they had left. And so then she was saying about something with her mom's basement suite, and she had to go in there and give the tenant notice and all this. And everything that she was saying is absolutely against the rules here. She had
Okay.
absolutely no idea what she was doing. And lo and behold, when the tenant moved out, there was damage. Well, because you actually mistreated him as a tenant.
Mhm.
So there are so many people who don't know what they're doing. I would be watching, getting on the landlord forums, helping people out, giving them advice. And then when you see someone who's a tired landlord who has that I just want out of this vibe, and there are a lot of them there, you might be able to swoop in and rescue them from being a landlord. So
Definitely.
the I just got a call. It's a condo, unfortunately, so I don't want it. But I got a call yesterday from somebody, and so she had a condo that she was living in. Then she moved in with her boyfriend. So now they have this nice condo, nothing fancy, but it's in a decent building, mostly owner occupied. So it's a good condo, and she's had it rented, and the tenants are great, but she doesn't want to be a landlord. She doesn't want any hassle. She just wants it gone. And yeah, the tenants are great. There's no problem with them. They pay the rent, they take care of the place, but she never wanted to be a landlord. So yeah. Sorry, I'm babbling, but
No,
I
That's
got
okay.
suddenly excited about the possibilities for you in Ontario, just going in and rescuing tired landlords.
yeah. My whole thing is just how many people can I help? That's my motto. So, I see it, the being at 1.6 for 3 years is
Oh,
it's cash flowing as is too. So it's just a matter of me, like you said, kind of explaining that I need to bring the price down to account for the penalty that he could avoid, the agent commissions, and maybe mitigate some of that cash for keys money in the purchase price.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, use that as a negotiating point.
The other thing
Yeah.
you could look into is sound, putting some acoustic material on the wall, on the ceiling or something in the, like, because there's quite a bit you can do for sound suppression, but
That's a really good point, Daryl. That four-level split we have that is suited, we didn't put in the suite. It was already built. We just legalized it. And there was zero soundproofing between the two bedroom levels, and the sound carried so badly. But we have an awesome insulation guy, and what he did was he cut a strip along the whole ceiling, and then he piped in cellulose both ways, and then the drywall repair, and of course we had to have the ceiling repainted. In total, and now, so this is just 600 square feet because it's the four-level split. I think in total it was about $2,000. This was about 5 or so years ago. But even if it was 3,000 now,
Mhm.
that just made such a difference for the tenants. That would be something to look into. So for how big is the place?
It's a duplex. I don't remember the dimensions off the top of my head, but it's two bedrooms. So
Okay.
one on top of the other.
Well, let's call it 1,000 square feet. So it might be $5,000 to do, but that's something to consider, because if that's going to eliminate a hassle and keep tenants happier and keep them in there for longer, that
Mhm.
could be really worthwhile.
Especially it would also mitigate issues for future tenants.
Hmm.
And to me, the way I see it is I could have a discussion with them and explain to them, hey, if we go through an eviction process, the first step is mediation. We could just do our own mediation, and it's either cash for keys or I put that cash into the
Nice.
sound. So another thing I was wondering was when's the stage where we would want to reach out to like, there's a point where we want to talk to the lender, right? To make sure that, or is that not, we don't do that?
The
Making sure that,
only The only talking I do to the lender is go in with my power of attorney and the seller and say, switch the bank account to the mortgage to come from my bank account, please.
Yeah, because we're operating it as a property
Yep,
manager.
we are operating the property. We are controlling all income and expenses and managing and operating the property. And you can even say it's on behalf of the owner, because technically that is what you're doing. You are operating the property on behalf of the titled owner, and in the end it's to your benefit, but at this point they are still the titled owner and you are taking over management, so it's kind of on their behalf.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of
And
is
so
and it kind of isn't.
the joint bank account usually is with a third party bank. It's not with.
If you're doing the joint bank account, I do that with my bank.
Okay.
Yeah, so my first choice is to take the seller and the power of attorney. We go to their bank where the mortgage is, and we get it to come from one of my personal accounts. Of course, it's for real estate purposes only. It's not my personal account, but it's in my personal name, right? So my first choice is to take the power of attorney and the seller, go to the bank where the mortgage is, and have the mortgage payments switched to come from my account. If they are not able to do that, and I know at least one bank who isn't able to do third-party payments whatsoever, then the second choice is to set up a joint account. That would be at my bank, my branch. And again, you walk in there with the seller and your power of attorney, and you set up the joint bank account, and then you can have the payments come out of that account with the joint name.
Okay. So basically the whole negotiation is just between the seller and I at this point.
Yeah.
To come to a conclusion and to make sure that we get the power of attorney and we get him to sign the land transfer ahead of time in case something happens.
Yeah, and that's
those.
all. And I still haven't got. I've been waiting on a realtor friend in Ontario to get me the most current, and he hasn't responded. I have to message him again to get me the most current version of the real estate contract, the fillable version, PDF, and I haven't got that yet. So, but you do have, and so what I need to do too is, of course, I can't
I
reach
guess I'll have to also start connecting with more lawyers. I do know a couple I spoke to said they're familiar and able to do it, but sometimes I don't know how much I should trust them all, because sometimes even the professionals they want to help, but sometimes they're not capable.
Yeah, so I do have a few. The list I have is a few years old, but I'm sure at least a few of them are still practicing. So the lawyers list and the purchase agreement, and then I need to put in also just the list of the terms, so you have it kind of all in one place to make sure that all of the terms that you need are either, and I mean this would apply to anybody, to have to pull all the terms off of my purchase agreement so that you can just see what they all are, and that way you can either copy them and paste them into your purchase agreement, or have the addendum. So to
Okay.
make sure that everything, and now some of those don't have to be on there. Like for instance, the buyer reserves the right to put a yard sign on the property. You can trim those down, things that are unnecessary, or in the case, like even to have contractors enter the property. If you know you don't need that, you can just get rid of that to make it tighter,
Make
because
it
I know you. Yeah.
or more appealing
Yeah,
with
and
less clauses and conditions.
but for yours, you would need the most important key terms to be in your additional terms section. I know that that is very small on your contract. So you would need the key ones in your additional terms section, and then anything else could be on an addendum. But as I say, you may find that you don't need several of them, like the yard sign. I don't have a contract in front of me to even think of what they are, but I know some of them, yeah, you could
Yeah,
just
because
eliminate.
I know in the version you provided us, covers like everything. So
Everything.
there's everything in there. But okay, that makes sense. We don't
Yeah.
need to overcrowd it with things that
Well,
are unnecessary,
yeah, and to my
depending on the
knowledge,
situation.
because I created that contract, and I don't. So I'm just going to say that anybody else who's doing it got the idea from me. but yeah, because everybody that I've ever worked with who does agreement for sale, or people I've taught with, they just use, you know, extremely basic purchase contract. And then a lot of these terms, not all of them, some are in the contract, the purchase contract, but a lot of them are only in, like the renewal thing.
Mhm.
A lot of people only talk about that in the agreement for sale itself. And I don't like that. I don't think that's fair, that we're not getting the seller to read and sign that right now, because then it looks like we've surprised him with it in the document he's signing at the lawyer. And the reason
Mhm.
I don't like that approach, and I'd rather, if possible, have everything the day we're signing the purchase contract is the day that you know all of this is happening. So the reason I like that in there is because I was bamboozled by Bridgewater Finance, or whatever they're called. They're a smaller bank.
Okay.
So you know how when you sign a regular mortgage commitment letter, it's usually, let's say, 3 pages long, and it should highlight all of the key terms of what the whole mortgage is, right? And then, like my purchase document does, highlights the terms, and then they're explained in the agreement for sale. Well, what this bank did was they said, oh yes, well, there's the 3 months interest penalty or interest rate differential penalty if you pay it off early. That was in the mortgage commitment letter. What was in the actual mortgage document was that the interest rate differential penalty is calculated based on the Bank of Canada bond rate, not calculated against the prevailing interest rate. So even though at that time interest rates had risen, so our mortgage rate was here and the current interest rate was here, so we should have been paying a 3 months interest penalty. Instead, we were paying a $16,000 interest rate differential penalty because they were calculating against the Bank of Canada bond rate. We saw that in the mortgage document when we signed the mortgage document at the lawyer, but
Mhm.
what could we do? I mean,
Yeah, you're already in the deal, and it was
like
kind of a surprise.
the deal was supposed to close 5 days earlier. This was now Christmas Eve. The bank had sent us documents 5 days late. This was Christmas Eve. The seller was saying, if you don't close today, this deal is done and you're losing your $10,000 deposit.
Mhm.
So we had to sign. We had no choice. And so I really I don't like surprises at the best of times. I mean, unless it's a surprise party or something, but
Yeah.
I don't like surprises in business. And so that's why I really like to have all the terms in the purchase document whenever possible. And then the details and explanations and all the A to Z is in the agreement for sale document.
Okay.
Was that a multi-unit building or?
Just a suited house.
Oh,
Yeah, just a $300,000 house, and we had to pay a $16,000 penalty, and it was just
yeah,
still annoys me.
because I think in some commercial mortgages, they tend to use the bond rate rather than the prime rate. And
Well,
but
that's possible, but it's something to be aware of because, yeah, it really changes the landscape of mortgage penalties.
I was going to ask, have you ever done a conversion of garage or?
No, I've I would like to, but I think because I still would like to have use of the garage. I know some people convert the whole garage and then it's just street parking. I don't like that idea at all. I think that garages are, especially here where we have the extreme temperatures, you know, plus 38 in the summer and potentially minus 38 in the winter, not for very many days. You know, it's usually only a few weeks of the extreme hot and a week or two of the extreme cold, but still people really appreciate the garage. So I would want to keep it whenever possible. But what would be wonderful is if you had either a full side-by-side duplex with the double garage, or the equivalent of a triple garage in the back, and then build a suite over top, or I construct the garage, or because building the suite over top would be complicated. But yeah, and we actually did have one place that had no garage. So that's something to think about too, is if you buy a place with no garage and then construct a big garage with that, you could have the double garage for the house, the separated single for the garage suite, and then a nice suite above, because you could build a pretty decent suite over a 3-car garage. But the garage suite construction is actually really expensive. So it's, I think
in Ontario, they've brought in policies now, and a lot of, well, the province did, that basically forces all the municipalities to support these secondary. They're basically, they can't say you can't have more than one suite on a property now. So
yeah.
it really supports these backyard buildings.
Yeah, and that's the trend. That's a growing trend, is that more and more municipalities are suite friendly, because they need to densify, and they want to densify but still keep the the lower density, as opposed to ripping down all the houses and turning it all into apartments. They want to keep the houses, but they still need to find ways to densify those neighborhoods. So that's why you see a lot of row houses, and here in Edmonton now you can do a side-by-side duplex with suites. Actually, I think you can even do a fourplex of row houses, townhouses with all legal suites. That is, so it's effectively an 8-plex, but it's 4 townhomes. And all of that is getting more common in a lot of centers, and much more accepted. And that's also going to help to keep those values, as well as places become more suite friendly.
Yeah, Okotoks even have a grant. They'll give you money to put in a basement suite.
Oh, we used to have one. I got it a couple times. It was fantastic. But you have to be really careful on the rules on those, because sometimes they can be, it's same as the CMHC insured commercial mortgages. Sometimes they restrict you so much in what rents you can charge that you find that it's actually cheaper to just borrow the money off a regular borrowing account, as opposed to doing the grant. But yeah, for the first 2 grants that we got, the rule was that we could charge whatever rent we wanted, but we could only rent to people who made below median income. But it's a basement suite. Almost everybody who wants to live in a basement suite makes below median income. So we only had, the exception was, we have a lot of people who might work in camp in the oil sands. And so then they come out of the oil sands and all they want is a basement suite, because they're only here for a week. So they just want a basement suite where there's somebody living above them and the place looks occupied and they don't have to worry about their stuff and they don't have to worry about the sidewalks. So they love basement suites. But those are the only people who ever applied that we couldn't rent to. Everybody else was below median income. But yeah, you have to watch the rules, because then a few years later they switched it where it did limit the amount of rent we could charge. And I looked at it and said, yeah, I'll just put the money on my line of credit.
Right.
Not worried about this.
Okay. I wanted to ask you on the promissory notes, how do you tie it to another security, like or a property?
That's something I haven't tried before, to tie it to a different. No, actually I have. Yeah, because it doesn't even matter which, because you're just saying that person has the ownership interest in that property. Because I have a promissory note with somebody, and so it was he owed me $13,000 on this property, but now he had no further rights to that because he was a rent to own tenant who had to walk away. And so he owed me the 13,000. And so we put a promissory note that he signed against a condo that he has an ownership interest in. So if he ever sells that condo, then my promissory note is registered on title. And that's an important thing. You do need to register that on title. So yeah, that'll pop up as a instrument against the property. And if they ever do sell it, they're going to have a chat with me or my lawyer, really. But yeah, so it's not necessarily the property that is in question. So you
Or-
could even secure it against your personal residence, although I wouldn't.
So that's
Or the
that's
car,
kind of
our
like,
car, I suppose.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of like doing a second mortgage, but with a promissory note in a way.
sort of, yeah, because you are securing a loan, because a promissory note is a loan. You're securing a loan against a property. So it is kind of like a second mortgage, yeah.
So I guess you would have a legitimate interest in that property on paper, or is that just the promissory note that includes that document?
In the case of the promissory note that I hold, that person is not on title to the property. He's a partner in the property that we have the caveat on.
Okay,
But because it doesn't say that he's the titled owner, that's not what the promissory note says. The promissory note says that the person has an interest in the lands, or
okay.
something like that. And he
That's
does. He has an
creative.
interest in the lands.
I was also, there's another opportunity that I forgot to bring up. It's an older gentleman. The agent told me that he owns all of it. He owns it all outright, so there's no mortgage. And it's a duplex, a single family home, and a mechanic's garage with a bachelor on top of it.
Oh, wow.
And I ran the numbers, and it's definitely has, even without tenant turnover, it's still cash flowing, but with the tenant turnover that might be included with a couple of vacancies on closing, it would be definitely really healthy in terms of cash flow. So I'm also trying to talk to that agent to say, hey, like, I want to work with the existing financing. And I'm just wondering if you have any tips or tricks if it's 3 properties all in one lot.
But if he owns it outright with no mortgage, then you're not working with existing financing. You're just working out a seller financing.
Yeah, seller financing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess if he did have like a $100,000 loan, for example, that would be where the agreement for sale would come in handy, and then the rest would be seller financed or something.
Well, it's anything that he is fronting or carrying is seller financing. So that
Okay.
could be, so basically, if you're not getting a new mortgage, so anything you're not getting in a new mortgage and anything you're not paying on cash, the rest is going to be seller financed. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, in the case of somebody owning it outright, you could approach it one of two ways. So you could propose that it's that title transfers, but in this case, you're going to need that big down payment. Because
Mhm.
personally, I wouldn't even look at a vendor take back if somebody wasn't putting down a big down payment.
Yeah.
So
It'd be nice if the down payment at least covered the agent commissions for the seller and.
no, I'm talking
Or-
20 or 25% down. If
Okay.
title is transferring now and you're doing a vendor take back, and then you're just financing, the seller is financing part of it, but if title is transferring, then you would need to have a big down payment.
Okay.
So if you're still hoping for a low down payment, then you've got to convince him of doing the agreement for sale where he gets to keep title. So that's his security. But remember that because he's a landlord, right?
Mhm.
These are all investments. Yeah. So remember, the big selling point for landlords with agreement for sale is the tax deferral. So they get to, if they're selling on agreement for sale, then they get to defer their taxes over 5 years. So they get to
yeah, they could
split up,
spread it.
yeah, they get to split up their capital gains tax burden over up to 5 years. So if your term is 5 years, then they can do it for 5 years. If your term is 3 years, pretty sure they can only do it for 3 years. So if you can talk to him about that and even get him to suggest, you know, maybe the guy could suggest to the realtor that the seller might want to even chat with his accountant and see how much he'll benefit by splitting the capital gains tax burden over 5 years. Because with what I'm proposing with us buying using seller financing, where we set up a mortgage basically between him and I as the buyer, and then so we set up the seller financing, we buy on agreement for sale, he gets to keep title in his name, so he's got security on this deal. If I don't do what I say I'm going to do, and if I don't pay, then it's pretty easy for him to just take it back.
Mm-hmm.
But the big benefit to your seller, Mr. Realtor, is that he's going to save a ton of money on capital gains tax by splitting that tax burden over 5 years. So this is what I'm proposing that we sit down and chat about. But you may want to suggest to your seller to have a chat with his accountant and confirm how much he could potentially be saving by selling it to me this way.
Plus, I could give him a much bigger purchase price if I kind of bake all the interest that I'm willing to offer him into the total.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's another thing too, is that well, now with him owning it outright, you might have to pay interest. So
Oh yeah.
it just depends, but it could still go either way. It could be that you pay kind of a bonus price that, okay, you've got them listed for a total of $1 million. Well, what I'll do is I'll buy it over 5 years of seller financing, and I'll pay you 1.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not suggesting that you say that. You need to figure out appropriate numbers for yourself. I just picked one out of the sky. But yes, you could do it as I'll pay $50,000 more or whatever.
I guess you could also maybe give a preferred return throughout the term, but then pay like the second half on closing at the end. Maybe I'm not sure if that's a thing, but
Well,
if it's
in most cases, we want to pay as little as possible until the very end when title transfers. But
Mhm.
when you have somebody who owns it outright, then we're gonna negotiate whatever works for you. So
Yeah.
with your or him, I mean, with your seller. So here's where you, as with all sellers, you need to really find out what they need. But then when a seller owns it outright, you also want to try to help them with what they want. So maybe he needs $40,000 a year to live off of.
Okay. So then you just do the math and see if you can service that with
Yeah, yeah.
the income.
Or
Right.
or it could be he needs $10,000 a year, but he really wants a travel fund. So he wants an extra 10. And
Mhm.
then the rest he can wait for it. Like you don't know until you find out what he needs. You have to have that conversation with him. And that's again where you need to uh, try your best to be able to get into the same room with the seller and his realtor, because he
Mhm.
still wants his realtor to handle this on his behalf. But it's, if you can convince the seller's realtor that the easiest thing is for the three of us to just sit down at the table, and then we can really figure out what is mutually beneficial. And but I can tell you, Mr. Realtor, that by selling it this way, the seller is going to save a ton of money on capital gains taxes, and he's going to probably get more money selling this way than he would clear selling it another way, selling it conventionally, because I'm willing to pay a premium in order to have the privilege of working with seller financing.
I guess just because he owns it outright doesn't mean he couldn't put a mortgage on it.
Yeah,
Or-
that's the
oh.
other thing too, is that is that if he needs a big chunk, so thanks for bringing that up, because if he does need a big chunk of money right away, you know, let's say he wants to go and buy a vacation or a new house in Belize, and
Mhm.
he wants to move there, and he wants to buy a fancy place in Belize, so he needs $200,000 out of his $1 million portfolio, then yeah, it's pretty easy for him to go and get a $200,000 mortgage.
And then I service his debt for him
Yeah, yeah,
and manage the whole portfolio.
yeah. But again, you need to sit down with the seller, find out exactly what he needs, and then do your absolute best to make that work, to make that happen. So I mean, and he might not need much. He might need $200,000 or $300,000. But if the portfolio is worth $1 million, then it's not going to be that difficult to get $300,000 in a loan or a
Mhm.
mortgage. So
Just like
Especially,
go ahead.
secured
I wasn't
line
saying.
of credit would be the better loan, as long as it's capped and he doesn't have access to any potential equity pay down. But like I
Okay,
said
yeah,
before, I
that makes sense.
wouldn't normally pay down the home equity line of credit anyway, and that's one nice thing about the HELOCs, because most of them are interest only payments. So if he gets a HELOC that's $200,000, then you just leave it sit there and you just pay the interest, and it sits at the full capacity of $200,000, and nobody can buy anything, or I mean, borrow anything more against it because it's already maxed out. And then as soon as title transfers, that would get paid off out of your end.
I know there's somebody in Okotoks, they have 20 condos in one building, and they've been trying to sell them for forever for $3 million. And so and they own them, basically own them outright. So it's kind of an equivalent kind of situation where
So you're going to go buy them?
well, have had discussions with them, but it's funny, they seem to insist on selling them as a package rather than, I've said, don't you just sell them individually? And he said, well, we should be, but they still
Well,
are. I see they're still on the market.
so it's all in one building. How many units are in the building?
They basically own half the units in the building, so
That's a
they
sweet
must
deal.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sweet deal if because then you become, if you own half, well, even if you own what is I think it's 30% is quorum usually, but anyway. So if you own half the units in the building, then you can do whatever you want in that building. And the nice thing there too is that of course you'd be on the board, so you would know everything that's going on, and you would have control over everything that's going on. The only downside with owning that many is if there was a major issue and then there was a big special assessment, then you could suddenly owe, you know, a couple $100,000 in special assessment.
Which
'Cause
happened. They had to
yeah,
replace the boiler once, so that was
well, I've had people. I had one condo owner call me. This was several years ago, but they had one of them had a special assessment for $25,000, and another one, no, this one I heard of, no, yeah, maybe it was one of my calls, and it was $50,000 special assessment because it was a really big built complex, and there was a huge problem with the underground parking. So it was a huge expense. So that's always possible. And and uh, and one thing too, if there's when I take calls about condos, I always, because you know, you ask the reason for selling, but in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, is a special assessment coming that they've heard about, and that's their reason for selling. Because there are cases of people, especially if the person is on the board, if they're, because me being on the board of directors for the condo we own, I know that we've had a special assessment looming for the last 3 years, and we've been putting it off because we still haven't got the tenders for the roof replacement. But I know that we're going to have a $7,000 special assessment. It's just a question of when. But it's not official yet. It doesn't show up in any AGMs. Well, finally now it shows up in a board meeting, but before that it didn't even show up in a board meeting. It was just in emails between, because we knew that, okay, we have to get tender for the roof and whatever, but there was no talk of special assessment until this board meeting last month. So somebody looking at the condo documents, they're not going to know anything about a special assessment unless they're on the board.
Yeah. Yeah,
So you
that's
want at least
a huge risk.
Yeah, so technically I could go now and I could sell my unit, and there's nothing, well, as I say now, it's, so let's pretend it's a month ago before we talked about this at the board meeting and it became official that there would be a special assessment coming. Again, we don't know how much it is yet or when still, but there is mention of a special assessment. But yeah, at this point, it's still not official as to how much or when. But I could sell my condo right now, and there is no official special assessment. So even though I know something's coming, I could just sell it and wash my hands of it. So that's just something to be aware of with condos too, that somebody could be sneaky.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock already. Huh. All right. Oh, I haven't even talked to you about what I wanted to talk to you about. So I have had a few requests for, now I lost it again. I've had a few requests for coaching and mastermind and all of that. So I'm tossing around, there might be a mastermind group coming, but I am offering to a very small group of people to do 6-month coaching. Now, even though this class is already small, I still couldn't possibly work with everybody at the same time. So it is going to be very limited. And I am only opening up the coaching to this class at first. And then, in a few months, then I'll open it to previous classes. But yeah, for right now, it's special for you. So if you want to have further coaching for a 6-month program and have all the hand holding and conference calls and I mean, because really we could have a Zoom call with the seller at their kitchen table if we wanted to. So there's all kinds of ways that we can that I can be useful and help you to really maximize your earning potential and get you kind of fast tracked. So that is something that, again, I'm only offering to this class right now. And if you are interested in that, then just shoot me an email and we'll discuss some details as to what could work for you. And yeah, and that was what I think that was all I wanted to, yeah. And with that, so one of the details is we would just meet as needed. So it wouldn't be, oh, we have a 1-hour call each week. It's, you need me, I'm there. Let's schedule something. So we would meet as needed, because some weeks you might not be doing anything, and other weeks it's just potential deal after potential deal. That seems to be how it goes. So yeah, it's meet as needed. For 6 months, you've got me. I'm your beck and call girl. So to steal a line from Pretty Woman, but anyway. All right, any other questions or thoughts?
I always have so many questions, but to get them all, the format that I could ask them is another story.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure once I put all the final documents into the portal there for the separating out the terms and if I can ever get a current copy of the Ontario and all the lawyers and all of that, once I put all of that stuff in, and I'll send you all an email to let you know that it's in there, and then you'll probably have some questions at that point, and again, you can just email me with those and we'll get those sorted out.
Okay. Calvin, where are you? And
I'm in Ottawa.
Oh, okay, Ottawa, yeah.
And I'm always looking for opportunities in Sudbury and Ottawa. Sudbury is about 5 hours away, but I'm originally from Sudbury. So, and the prices from Ottawa to Sudbury is drastic, like the agreement for sale, I could probably get that for 460, or sorry, 360
Oh, nice.
for a duplex. And in Ottawa, a duplex could be 600,000-700,000. I actually was looking at one for 2.2 million just for fun. And it's a duplex. It's just a duplex. So,
And how do the rents compare?
the rents are pretty good in Sudbury, I would say. I'm actually getting 2,000 for a 2-bedroom out there. And out here, I think the prices are pretty similar, which is the cool part, because the prices are very low, but the rents are still
That's why I was
healthy.
asking. Yeah, because we found that between Edmonton and Calgary, because Calgary tends to increase before Edmonton, we're usually 6 months to a year behind them. And their prices have always been higher. But if you look at the rents between Edmonton and Calgary, they're not that much different. But the prices are higher in Calgary. So it's
I think there's just a lot more renters in Edmonton relative to the population.
probably. I haven't looked at stats like that in a little while, but yeah, that is probably the case. We have a lot more, transient is the wrong word, but there's a lot more people who are sort of in flux, and as I mentioned, a lot of people are based here who work in camps, and that happens across the country, but it's a lot out of Edmonton. And so yeah, people don't want to buy, they don't want their responsibility, they want to stay renting for longer.
Right. The attractive thing about Sudbury too now is the nickel is a big demand now for electric cars. So the industry there kind of slowed down for a number of years, but it's I imagine a busy place now.
Oh yeah, the miners in Sudbury are bringing in a lot of dough, so they're buying brand new cars and paying high rents, and probably a lot of them are buying properties as well. But there's so many out of town miners, so Airbnb is great, and it's a lucrative market. I think it's, other than the fact that it's in Ontario and there's the landlord uh non-landlord friendly aspect about it, but other than that one thing, I think it's a amazing market.
Yeah,
But
I yeah.
go ahead, Daryl.
But I know this. Saw a presentation from a fellow who specialized in Ontario renting our properties, because he says, if as long as you're willing to pay cash for keys, he says you can make a lot of money in Ontario, because the effect of the rent controls they have is it keeps the rents down for the existing renters. So it's quite lucrative when you get rid of those renters.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Because you're limited to whatever, a 1% increase or a 2% increase or whatever it is. But yeah, your market there where you have a lot of workers making high money, and it's a more it sounds like there's a lot going on there. You're going to have a different tenant profile. You're not going to have the welfare mindset like you do in some other places. So it sounds like Sudbury is a great, and I know Ottawa has been a great place for a long time, but yeah, I think Sudbury sounds like a really good market with that more ambitious, let's get up and make some money tenant profile. You're going to find there's less people who are going to be deadbeats, because if they're there to make money, then they don't want to put any of that at risk either. So
plus they're probably interested in kind of higher quality rent places because they can afford it.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then being from there, I get to know which areas to avoid as well, that you might not be aware of if you were, not from there. So that helps. And then it's different because I'm looking at a lot of opportunities in Ottawa where it's close to the LRT. They just put a new underground subway kind of system. And so ideally finding an agreement for sale for a property near the new LRT stations means that that's a huge potential for land development.
Well, not only that, but if you're within a certain distance from the public transit, specifically LRTs, then you're going to enjoy a bigger appreciation. So then when it eventually does come, so that is one place where appreciation is practically guaranteed, is when you're buying where there's new construction of new infrastructure like that. So the major ring roads is another one, and LRTs. Those are the two big major infrastructure developments where if you're in early enough, you will easily see a 10 or 15% increase above what the rest of the city grows. So yeah, when it comes time to eventually refinance, it should be relatively easy, because if they're already growing and the economy is poised for growth to continue, plus you're near an LRT, that's magic.
Yeah, it really is. I've heard like my perfect unicorn deal would be to find a property near the LRT that services itself, and then to slowly collect all the entitlements for a big development and then assign it to a builder by the time the term is up. Because builders want to build, they don't want to do all the homework and dealing with the permits. So if I could do the hard part for the builder while I'm not putting any money into this thing, then that's like huge.
Wow. Yeah, and it's funny. A friend of mine, Darcy Marler, he has a course on development, and one of the things he talks about, because I attended one of his webinars, and he was talking about ideally when you're doing development is that you're getting control of the property without actually having to buy it and get financing. And so this is one of the ways you do that, is with agreement for sale. You are getting control of the property. You're putting little to no money down into it, but you've got that control. You've got that beneficial ownership and operational control. And then you can go and get the permits and go and do all that prep work. And as you say, get it all set up for a builder, and then turn around and sell the property for a profit. And you're getting an income based on the extra work that you've done by setting this up for them. You're getting a nice income from that. And all this time you haven't had to actually go out and, sign a mortgage or apply for a mortgage or whatever. So yeah, it's a magical world with when you combine development and agreement for sale. And actually that's one of the things that I'm hoping to get going on next, is buy properties like that Lloydminster deal. If it wasn't in Lloydminster, buy the property, develop it, put a little fourplex or something on it, and then hold it with seller financing as long as I can, just because it's nice, and then refinance it or sell it based on the new value with that property on there. And like you said, sometimes you don't even need to go and do the build. You can just do all the homework and do all the setup and get all the permits. And if there needs to be subdividing, Darcy was telling me he did one deal where he got the property, he subdivided it. This one he ended up building on, but he got an offer. He could have made, it was just shy of $1 million just for getting control, doing all of the subdivision, all of the planning and all of that. And he could have sold it for almost $1 million profit by doing that. But he decided to keep it and actually do the build. But you could do it either way. You have so many options open to you. So I love the combination of agreement for sale and developing. So yeah.
Once you get into getting the entitlements too, you're probably going to develop a bit of a team where you might be able to take that build on.
Yeah, well, exactly. And in his experience, because he's been doing this for a long time, there are times where he has basically acted as the developer and builder and just subcontracted all of the so that's the toughest when you're the head honcho of everything and you're controlling everything that trickles down. That's the toughest way to go. I wouldn't want to start with that, but you can, like, for instance, I know of a builder who specializes in infills. So when, and he's highly recommended by a trusted colleague and friend who's in the multifamily field. So when I find the right property, I already know I have a builder that I can work with that will take a lot of they've been doing this exact thing for quite some time. So it's going to take a lot of the work off of my shoulders. Of course, every bit of work gets money, so it'll cost me a bit more to have somebody take over all those responsibilities. But for my first development, I would rather have that.
Yeah,
So,
100%. Well, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
yeah. And I don't know if there's if Darcy's course translates to every province. Actually, I think no, he's based in Calgary, but I don't know if it translates. But if you, I should send you his. He has a lot of free stuff on YouTube and free webinars and that. So I'm gonna
Yeah, that'd be really
On-
cool to look
On
at.
that, what was it called, that conference, the resilience or something conference?
Oh yeah, the real estate resilience conference. Yeah,
He-
he
He
spoke at
did a
that. Yeah.
presentation, and you can buy the notes or something, the videos for that conference for $40, I think. Or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, but
So,
I'll send you his website, and then, because like I say, he's got a lot of free stuff that gives you a lot of information, and most of it would translate to Ontario as well. And then if you, I don't know if he consults. I know he has the course, but I don't know if he consults if you ever had a big project where you were just, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this. But he's a pretty helpful guy, so he's a good person to have a contact for, to be able to reach out. But we should think about wrapping this up. Any last minute questions?
That's we went over a lot
oh,
of
great, thanks. Yeah, a very good material and well prepared.
Oh, that reminds me. I'm going to be pestering you for testimonials. So
Okay.
I would love it if you guys would maybe come on. We can do a little sort of an interview about your experience. But what we could, it's better if you actually do a deal first, but we could do it, do one where it's just, yeah, here the course was awesome, because of course it is. But we could, but then once you, so you can, we can do one where it's you talking about how you're going to move forward. And then once you actually have done a deal or two, then we can come back and do another one where you can tell people all the fantastic deals you're getting.
results.
And
Yeah.
the results. Perfect. Excellent. Well, so as I said, if you are interested in the hand-holding and the coaching and all of that, then email me and we can chat about it. And otherwise, I will be pestering you for the testimonials. And yeah, I'll email you once I've got all the final documents in as well. All right. Thanks, guys. And I'll talk to you soon.
Have an
Thank
awesome
you.
night.
You too.
Yeah.